Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Closed Mouths Don't Get Fed radio show. I'm your host, Travé Nicole, and what do you know? Video replays are back, and so I'm so excited for you guys to be listening in on the show, and I'm so excited for you guys to be able to see me face to face, especially since we have a special guest on our show for today. I'm excited about all that we're going to talk about. But I just want to start off first by greeting you. I hope that you've had a blessed day. We just started a new month, and so I pray that this new month is filled with new opportunities and new blessings and new ventures for you all. I hope that your day has been well. My day has been kind of long, to be honest, but I can't complain. I'm blessed, I'm breathing, I'm here, and that means that I'm filled with purpose. And I know that that is what I have said we are focusing on today is purpose. But I just wanted to begin with that because there's so many things. There are so many things that are going on in the world today. So many things have been happening for over a year. Can you believe that it's been a year? It's been a year. I look on my timeline on social media and see people posting memories from January 2020, and I have to think twice that, oh, wow, it really is 2021. It's been a whole year. And I know that we thought this thing was going to end sooner than it has, but guess what? God is still good. Sickness and death may surround us on every side. It may seem that way, but there's a song that I just love that says, "It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you." And I'm talking about God the Father, of course. And of course, the other part of that song that I love is "This is how I fight my battles." Yeah, love that. When it seems like darkness surrounds us, the enemy is surrounding us. I pray that you and that I and that we would have our eyes opened and see that God is on our side, kind of like Elijah prayed that God would open up his eyes. And you know what? God opened his eyes and he looked and saw on the hills horses, several horses in the hills and chariots of fire. And I know last week we talked about how we pray to the God that answers by fire and we don't expect to see that smoke. But guess what? God answered by, this is one of those examples where God answered and there was fire. There was fire. And this gives me the perfect segue. I'm having all these good segues into our last week's show, but this gives us the perfect segue into last week's show because once again, that's what we talked about. God answering by fire. And he answers by fire in more ways than what we can see physically. When we begin to truly believe, we can feel that fire burning up on the inside of us, that fire of peace. Have you ever felt a peaceful fire, a fire of strength and a reassurance that he's got us, that we don't have to worry? It makes us feel powerful. You know, in the word, it says that his strength is made perfect in our weaknesses. And I'm glad about it. I don't know about you, but I'm glad about it. But we talked about where we can find peace most recently on last week, not pleasure. Remember, we confuse pleasure with peace, not the temporary pleasures of this life, those itches that need to be scratched, those triggers that need to be met with a response of anger or panic, memories and reminders that throw you into a fit of fury. We talked about where we can find peace, a permanent peace that surpasses all understanding, not that peace that the world tries to give to us, that fake and phony stuff, but the real peace, that permanent peace that we can only find in him. That peace that surpasses all of our understanding, once again, that soothes the weary soul, that cluttered mind, and that hardened heart, that peace. And I hope that today's show would bring you even more peace because we got something in store for you. So I'm not going to speak any longer because I could go on and on and on. I just want to introduce our guest. And so she empowers women, and I know for a fact men and children as well, to globally live life intentionally by tapping into the power of intentional thinking. Her story is one of transcendence, existing beyond the cultural norm. She is an acclaimed international speaker, author, and life coach whose message is simply move in the cut. I love it. Move in the cut. The redefinition of you. Please welcome to Closed Mouths Don't Get Fed radio show, Dr. Lovella Mogere. Dr. Lovella, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm
Well,
looking forward to it.
it's
Hmm.
truly an honor to have you on our show as our special guest. And I know I've been promoting it, so I don't know if everyone else is looking forward to tonight, but I have been looking forward to tonight.
Same here. Same here.
Many of you may not know, but if you have been following me, then you know that I've released a few books here lately, and I co-authored two of those books. And Dr. Lavella was on those books. She was the main author of the book, The Role of the Intercessor, Volume One and Two. Those are the two that I wrote. And before I go any further into the show, I'd love for you to just talk about what prompted you or the calling to write those books.
Thank you for that. I, but I have to come back real quick. I taught the class about 2 years ago, the role of the intercessor. Normally have classes to not only train, equip, but tool and retool the intercessors. And so I taught that class, the role of the intercessors, about 2 years ago. And I was getting ready to offer the class again. And one of my past students asked me, did I have a book on the role of the intercessor? And I said, sure. Um, it wouldn't be hard to write the book because I still have the notes. So I was thinking, well, that'll take about 3 days. And while I was compiling the notes to write the book, then that's what the Lord told me. He said, why don't you just get co-authors to write with you so they'll be able to express their heart, their experiences, and their intent about them being an intercessor. And the book would be set yet in place for the emerging intercessors that are trying to know who they are, find themselves or embrace who they are, connect or embrace their identity. And also, they'll be able to identify the symbolism, the characteristics, and the traits, so they'll be able to be comfortable in their skin. And that's how I was able to extend and then invite for co-authors. And as a matter of fact, it just kicked off. And since then, we are now on volume 3, now going on volume 4.
Right. All right. Well, once again, I'm honored to have you on the show, and I was honored to be able to be a part of two of those books. I just love how everyone's input, everyone's purpose, everyone's vision just came all together.
Yes,
So I find it really remarkable how God did that, and I mean that's how He operates. So He
yes,
continues to blow our
yes.
minds.
It wasn't sync in unison.
Yes, in unison, in sync.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right, so I want to go ahead and dig into what we're talking about on today. The people have heard me say a little bit about you. Now they can put a face with those accomplishments, and now they will know the foundation that birthed these accomplishments, the testimony that shifted you into where you are now. Being born in the Virgin Islands and growing up in an abusive household, and then you ended up in Texas. So if you don't mind sharing, can you tell us how you came from the Virgin Islands to Texas?
Oh, sure. My mom then wanted a better life for us, so she made decisions to she said she was just making up her mind. Where should we go? New York, New Jersey, and at that point, she was just kind of pinpoint where she wanted her family to live, have a better life, and also to be able to have the opportunities that she didn't have. So she did. She left before us, and she went off to New Jersey, and she said it was too fast paced. Then she went to New York, and she said it was too fast paced. Then she came back home, and then she had a friend that lived in Texas, and said, "You know what? Try Texas." And she packed up, started selling her things, emptied out of her house, and we were on our way to Texas, and that was May of '85. So yeah, it was funny because we are Caribbean students. When I said students, children born and raised, island to the bone, warm weather. And here it is May, it is summer. And we came to Texas with trench coats. Imagine that. We could laugh about it now, but it wasn't funny then. Preparing our minds for the winter, preparing our minds for the cold. Again, preparing our mind for an environment of culture. So we dressed the part, but when we got here, the weather contradicted our mindset. So we got here and we made up in our minds that we are not going to adopt, we're not going to let go of our culture because of who we are. And slowly but surely, as we met new friends and friends with the same common background, that's from the Caribbean as well, but they've been here a while. We adjusted. It took us months. It took me a while because I was older. So it took me a while to adjust. But as I grew and we became more, I said, we received or learned of new friends, and then we start growing beyond our culture, we adapted and adjusted. So that was a decision mom made. And yes, it changed and altered our lifestyle. We are all, she has 4 kids, we're all doing good, all in living productive life. So she's very, she made a wise decision. Of course, she prayed about it. But now as an adult looking back, we would like, what a Texas. We should have gone to New York and New Jersey, you know. But at that point, that's just us being this grown up. We should have gone to New York. But yeah, now we have children. So we are our kids are second generation well, first generation Texans. Yes.
Mm-hmm. You said a lot of things. A lot of things touch on some questions that I was going to ask later, and I'm going to wait till later.
Okay.
But and y'all, I had no idea what her answer was going to be. So, but you'll see later when I ask her these questions. But if you are just now listening into the show, we have the wonderful, remarkable Dr. Apostle Lovella Mogere with us, who just shared her testimony about how they got from the Virgin Islands to here in Texas and having to become acclimated to the culture here and the weather here, especially in Houston, because we know the weather. If you've never been to Houston and you're not living in Houston, the weather can be snowing one day and well, it hardly snows, but it can be freezing one day and then sunshiny the next day or 5 minutes later. So, but she said a lot, and I think like that ties into what I've been kind of thinking about, studying, praying on, shifting, how God shifts us, whether that be location or it be relationships or careers, whatever that may be, and how he can shift us into something different. Yes. But yet we have this identity, and we may think that he's changing up on us all of a sudden, but he's really just bringing more out of us that's already in us, things that we just have not recognized yet. And just purpose. I believe that our purpose, as if you've been listening to the show, you know, our purpose precedes our formation. It says it in his word. He knew us before we were formed in the womb. So we've been talking about Jeremiah and his relation to Eli, the high priest, and how God once again said that he knew him before he was even formed in the womb. What is talking about identity and purpose? What is this significance? What is the significance of this, of what God is saying to Jeremiah, in your opinion, about how he knew him before he was formed in the womb?
Before he was even thought of, before he was even conceived, before his parents even thought about being parents, before his grandparents even thought about him being a grandchild. He was thought of before they even were able to conceive thoughts, consciousness, or even think of bloodline generations down the line. He was thought of, and God created and formed him. He meshed him. He put all of his parts together, even his mind. But not only did he created him or thought of him before the beginning of time, he entrusted him with time. So he knew you, which means he know of you, every part, every fiber of your being. He know what you're capable of, what you're going to do before you even think about it. Even the very mistakes that we make, and it doesn't make sense. And even when we beat up on ourselves, the creator already knows that we're already thinking these set thoughts. and the things that we get ourselves into that brings about harm or self-harm. He knows this. So he thought about Jeremiah before they could even think of their conception of, I'm going to have a child. I'm going to have a son named Jeremiah. He knew him before the beginning of time. Mhm.
Wow. And I believe I'm in complete agreement with you.
Mhm.
I believe that everything happens for a reason. And
Yes.
many may not agree with me. I've believed this since I was a young child, since I was a kid. I believe that every single thing that happens for a reason.
Yes.
Um, I mean, in his word, it says that he has a plan
Mhm.
and his word can never perish, then how can these things not work together for our good, which he
True.
also says in his word?
Mhm.
And for us to say that God is as big as he is, he's as great as he is,
Yes.
and he's on the inside of us, greater is he that's within us than he
Mhm.
that's in the world.
Yeah.
How could the very things happening around us not be for a reason?
That's
How
so
could it
true.
not be for a reason? I believe that God is intentional,
Mm.
and not just because the song says it, not just because Travis Green sang it. I believe God is intentional. He was intentional about building himself a place to dwell,
Yes.
a place to be housed. In the book of Exodus, the materials used to build this place, the exact measurements,
Yes.
the color schemes, as
Mhm.
well as the person who built it.
True.
So if these are parts of the word that we often skip over, and I'm saying that because when I first read it, I skipped over it because it was so much to read, but it matters. It all matters. And if he was that intentional about building that place for himself to dwell and everything that came along with it,
Mm.
how would he not be intentional about us, about building us, about forming us, about our identities? Some people may call me deep. I am deep. I'm deep in the Lord.
Yeah.
And I don't care what people think about it, but I think about just talking about color schemes and measurements and all of that. Our very eye color is
Mhm.
not without reason.
Mhm.
The way that our voice sounds
Yes.
is not without reason. The way that we laugh, our personalities, everything about us, he
Yes.
was intentional in making. And you talk about um, being formed before, or him knowing us before we were even a thought in anyone's mind. And I can just imagine, the Bible says that we were created in his image.
Yes.
I can just imagine him, especially for all of those people that, um, their parents had them out of wedlock, and so they think that they were a mistake, and maybe their parents may have caught them a mistake. But look, think about all that I just said, and I can just imagine. I'm just saying I can imagine God taking this personality and this strength and this character from your father and merging it together with this heart and this personality and these strengths and these weaknesses from your mother, and making one person for one purpose, for a place, for many places, called to many people.
Yes.
um I like to know what you believe, or what you think about that.
Mhm. Remember, like you said, the creator is intentional. He seeks opportunity, but at the same time, when he formed and created us, just like he said in Exodus, no, Genesis, I think it is. He created us in his image and likeness. So therefore, when he sees us, he sees an imagery of himself. He can't help but to see a reflection of himself. When we speak, we echo his voice, his consciousness. The more we spend time with him, we take on the fragrance of him. And the more we move in the characteristics, and the more we move and have our being in him, is the more, again, we reflect him. So he created us because he created himself. So when we speak to him in our transformed mind, we are echoing yet his voice is a vibration of himself. So pretty much he is just, again, duplicating, creating himself, speaking to himself. We are his heart. We are his heartbeat. So when he speaks, he hears his heart. his pulse, because we have the same passion, the same core, the same thoughts. And so as we go, yet even as we, like you keyword you said, build, as we build, execute, and duplicate, we can't help but to mimic or pattern the creator, because he creates things. So that's what we do. We create things. So we can't help but to think the way he do, mimic and representation, duplication, and multiplication as we create, yet with a transformed mind, with the creator mindset. So I look forward to, as we grow and as we evolve and as we take on more of the nature, letting go of the old man, that we produce at a greater or high performance, and we create more of an impact, because we move, like you said, in intentionality. And when we move, we're moving yet with his grace, with his intent, with his, when I said precision, we're moving with him, we're moving in him. So yes, we have as his identity. And keywords you said, even for those that are divorced, or even those that were born out of wedlock. And what came to mind was one time I was writing a book, and as a book of poetry, it's called When Love Rejects Me. It was a book of poetry. And while I was doing it, not knowing that it was a cleansing time for me, when I was writing it, I was talking about a young lady that was raped. And while she was raped, it was this again is a book of poetry. And she was so mad at God, that because she kept looking for her father in these men. And she was so mad at God. And she said, where were you? Where were you? And God came to her. He said, when you looked for him, when you looked for me in him, I was not there. When you looked for me in thus and thus, I was not there. When you looked for me in thus and thus, I was not there. He said, I was the one wearing the cape. I'm the one that saved you, embraced you, took comfort in you. I'm the one that saved you. So when you said identity, in the sense of us, when we take on the imagery of him and embrace who we are, we save ourselves. We
Right.
save ourselves. We save ourselves from harm's way. We save ourselves from death. We save ourselves from the plot and scheme of the enemy, because we become more sharpened in our spirit man. So we are able to detect, with discern, who we are, so we could fulfill the purpose of God.
Wow. Talking about identity and speaking on books, one of my books, Dear Daughter, I talk about how God is our perfect father. He is our
Mm,
father, and he is the one that we should look for that man in. Yes, we have our earthly fathers. God bless them, that God has blessed us with. My father was not in my life. He was not there when I was growing up. The
mhm.
only father I knew was my grandfather, who
Okay.
passed on a couple of years ago.
Mhm.
But one of the things that I often hear about is when girls or females or women are searching for their identity through the acceptance of a male figure. Um, and sometimes they search for the person that was their father, whether their father was good to them or their father was abusive. And people often say that I guess women go for the guys who will mistreat them and abuse them, but because that man maybe has told them, "Oh, you look pretty," even if it was just that one time, the
Yeah.
first time, first impressions are everything.
Yes.
And so they say, well, if the father doesn't tell their daughter that they look beautiful or that they look pretty, then that's not what they'll look for. They'll look for the person that treats them in a bad way or that abuses them because that is what they got. Um,
Mhm.
but in writing that book, it made me realize that God is the first. He is our Father that has already called us beautiful.
All right.
In His Word in the Book of Genesis, when it says that He created us, He said that we're good.
Mhm.
He said that we're good, and we were good enough to Him. We were perfect after He created us, and so why feel unworthy? Why feel like our mistakes erase that in God's our perfection to him? We are his glory, and anything that we do does not change that. And in addition to this, knowing our identity, knowing that we are his children,
Yes.
um and knowing that, um knowing who you are.
Mhm.
So I want to ask you a couple questions about that.
Okay.
I would like you to speak on how important it is to know who you are and know your identity for where he is calling us and for the people that he has called us to. I think my second question, I just kind of explained that a little bit more. Um,
Okay.
do you think that we can ever really and truly be aware of our surroundings, and how we receive information, how we comprehend it, how we handle it and deal with it, if we are not aware of our internal struggles or the man in the mirror?
Mm. Good question. Um, I'll start with the second question first. Um, Based on not only our energy, but yet also our mindsets, we can't help but to draw what we put out, what we project. And so a lot of us, again, we have those that are trying to discover who they are, and we have those that have this have embraced the narrative of who they think they should be, and then we have those that have accepted labels as names as their identity. So you have those that are seeking for to discover. They're on a journey of either healing or transformation, but they're going into depth as to who they are. So with that, they're going to going past them, and now they're connecting themselves, connecting the dots to their ancestors. And then you have those that have believed the narrative of you will never be nothing, you will never amount to nothing, and you're not worthy. So therefore, they have accepted that that is their identity, because first they rejected it, but because you hear it so much that it has been rehearsed, and now you can't help but to, and the words have now penetrated and now eat away and suffocated that prophetic seed or word spoken over their lives. So now they have taken on the imagery of that narrative. And then the other one is them, because they don't know who they are, they will accept based on the surroundings. Everyone is doing thus and that. That's just who I am. That's what I see. That's what I know. That's just who I am. So when it comes to identity, um, and I'll just use me for instance. I'm African American female because I am American by birth, so therefore African American female. My grandparents worked hard. My parents worked hard, and so based on culture, we're from the Caribbean. We would relate identity is that I'm not only African American, I am that island girl. And because now socially and religiously, my parents were in ministry, my grandparents were in ministry, I'm that PK or fourth, fifth generation child of God. So therefore, identity by sociology or society, identity by religion, identity by culture, based on bloodline, and now identity by now learning who I am through either relationship or marriage, because now I am his wife. So now, again, I'm adapting to all of these roles that we call identity. And also now I'm going to switch sidebar. Even I'll speak to the women, even in ministry, for those that are single and or married, just because we fulfill a role and we are wearing that collar, that don't mean that you could hide behind the collar, because at the end of the day, when you're not dealing with the collar, you have to go home to deal with husband or deal with your family. You have to still yet find yourself, because you will now bury yourself in ministry, bury yourself in work, bury yourself in those degrees, bury yourself in that career. And at the end of the day, when it's time to deal or connect with you, you don't know who you are, because you have given out of yourself so much that not only have you emotionally bankrupt yourself, now you have given out of emotional currency, you have given, and now you don't know who you are. So when you start dealing with you, you're lost. You're now tapping into an old timeline. You're going back into your early teenage years, your early 20s. You're going back to the place in which you perfected, the place in which you was comfortable with, the place in which you were able to walk in the potency, the potential of who you are. But now, because you're giving out and fulfilling all these roles, now when it comes to the identity of you, you don't know who you are. You can hide behind the collar, can hide behind the degree, can hide behind the badge, can hide behind the education. At the end of the day, remember, at the root of it is yet your substance. Substance speaks, and matter of fact, it illuminates through those smile. It illuminates through those smile. So just like one is having a bad day and they'll say, hey, I'm fine, I'm doing fine. But we could tell by your energy and by your demeanor that you're not doing good. You're not doing well at all. It's the same thing for identity. Based on your personality, it speaks of your mindset. Based on your substance, the core of you, it speaks that you are not only educated, but you're well versed, and you are poised, and you take time to what pour into you. You take time to nurture and cultivate you. So one, seeking or trying to know who they are by identity. What the question I would ask is, what identity? What are you looking for? Because sometimes we're tapping into ourselves, still trying to compare ourselves to others, and still trying to raise the standard of us. I want to be like the Joneses. I want to be like Sister So and So. I want to be like thus and thus, because they reject themselves, don't love themselves, loathe themselves, and they don't want to be them. So in order for you to embrace your identity, you first have to like that crooked nose, that chipped teeth, or that brown skin, or I'm too dark. Embrace you first, and then embrace all of you, mind, body, and soul. Then it wouldn't be a problem with you embracing who you are. So you wouldn't have to put the makeup on to look beautiful, because the makeup don't wear you, you wear the makeup, you know. So again, when you embrace yourself, you first accept every part of you, even the scars, I'm just going to put it out there, the birthmarks, everything about you you don't like. Yes, you embrace you first, then you'll be able to accept your identity.
Wow. Oh, you said so much. And it was so good. One of the questions, I had to start typing my question in there so I didn't forget it. One of the questions that came to my mind as you were talking was, and I had never thought of this before, but talking
Mhm.
about our identity, because yes, God knows exactly who we are.
Yes.
Um, do you think that we will forever be unaware of certain parts of our identity until certain things occur in our life?
Correct. So true.
When we go through
Mhm.
certain things.
Yes, we won't know or discover who we are until we tap into our potential, until we tap into the substance parts. How do we do that? When we're dealing with our most difficult, or when I said difficult decision, when our back is up against the wall because we're fighting a battle, when we've lost someone close to us, going through a divorce, when there is loss, you've lost your job, you're just going through something that will bring about trauma or pain. Then you will be able to test yet the pain. When I said test the strength within, then you'll know how much you're able to carry, the burden that you're able to carry. Now you're able to not only test the strength within you, know how much you could carry, but also know that you are built for this, that you have longevity, that you are loyal to yet not only the call, but loyal to the commitment of you being you. This is not going to break me. I'm not going to allow this to hurt me. I have to buckle up. I have to strengthen myself. I have to go beyond me. Now strengthen my family. Now strengthen my sister. Now strengthen that. So now not only are you bearing the pain, but you're also carrying someone upon your shoulders or in your heart. And now you'll go beyond self. You become selfless. You become selfless. And that's how you know, discover who you are, when there's pain, when there's agony, when matter of fact, when things are good, it's like, oh my God, it blows your mind. That's how you know that you're able to be trusted, because what God has given you is so big, it's phenomenal, and it literally blows your mind. It's like, wow, I'm worthy of all that. God, you entrusted me with all that. Now you're able to see that you could trust yourself. You know what I'm saying? You could trust yourself, trust what you are entrusted with, trust what you have been the steward over. And now you're tapping into different sides, characteristics of you. Part of my logo is refine you, meaning the cut, the extent of you. Every time we go through life, we're now digging into a cut or an extent of us or a dimension of us. So as we grow and we evolve, we're now tapping into another core of us, another cut of us, another dimension of us, and we become stronger, we become illuminated, we become, and in reality, when we're tapping into our true spiritual intelligence, and we can't help but to tap into something, some words come to us like, where'd that come from? I know it, I know the meaning. You're literally tapping into your original intelligence. We are discovering things that was stripped away from us due to slavery or a transforming of the mind or educational re-education. When we take on the image of Christ or take on the identity, it's like, whoa, I've heard this before. Where did I get that from? It's because we're tapping into us. We're tapping into identity. We're tapping into our God consciousness. We're tapping into our higher self. We're tapping into who the Creator called us to be. How He made, yet mold, shape us to be. Mm-hmm.
Wow. So we're talking about all good stuff. And when I talked on last week about Jeremiah being related to Eli, it was so honorable that he was related to the high priest. But if you've read your word and you know a little something about Eli, Eli did something that was very distasteful to God. And so there were consequences, which is how Jeremiah ended up in exile. I think we stretch out and we pay particular attention to our spiritual inheritance. I'll say our inheritance that we get from being children of God. I think that we neglect our natural inheritance, and not everything passed down to us is good. Not everything passed down to us is external. And not everything passed down is permanent. And so how do we know? Why is it important to know our roots, our background, our history? Like I said, Eli is a part of Jeremiah's history. Why is it important to know our history? How do we know what it is, especially if it's something internal that's been passed down? And then when we find out, what do we do?
Yes. Well, that's a good question. At that point, we either take on the responsibility of what our forefather did, or we just, some of us deny it by ignoring it, and some of us use it as a lesson. Okay, they did that. Now I shall grow from that, which means we either set the bar, two things. We either set the bar and go beyond what our family or bloodline has done, or God has chosen you to break that generational curse. So it just depends on how God has called you. Perfect example with Jeremiah and not Elijah, but you said perfect example. But what came to me was David. And David couldn't build the tabernacle because he had blood in his hands. So, but God gave him the tanith. You said, mention the plan. Tanith means in Greek and Hebrew, the plan, the blueprint, the construct. God gave him the details precisely. But yet, even though David sinned, God still trusted him to build. So even though the young man, he just slipped out of my mind, young man sinned, God still used Jeremiah. So even though we sin, we've fallen from grace, God still used somebody, our seed, our bloodline. But what is promised to our bloodline is still promised to our bloodline. Does it matter that I failed, that I made a mistake? Yes, it's between me and God. But the promise that He made before time was to your bloodline. So yet it has to be fulfilled. It's going to be manifested. Even though David had blood in his hands and he could not build the tabernacle, he extended the territory and the real estate by 400%. Why? Solomon carried out yet the instructions. He carried it out to a T. He followed it. Even though his dad sinned, King David, it possibly fell on him. But yet even David though he was loyal to God, faithful to God, yet sin fell in his house. His daughter was raped. But I'm just saying, but what was promised to that bloodline, God fulfill it. So what is promised to you, to your bloodline, because of the faithfulness of one, faithfulness of Aunt Mary that prayed for you, faithfulness of Uncle William that prayed for you, his children's children and the bloodline will receive and the inheritance of that reward because of the promise that him and God made, because of the vow, the covenant that him and God made. And that was his vow. The vow also is connected to your identity. God, the creator already knows who you are. He already know that you're going to sin. He already know that you're going to fall. He already know what you're thinking before you even think about it. But yet, because of your commitment and yet your loyalty, because of who you are, because of the love that you have for him, he is still willing to make a covenant with you, a vow with you, a promise between you and your bloodline, because somebody within your bloodline is going to fulfill what you didn't do,
Right.
you know, fulfilling yet the promise. That's still an inheritance. That's still an identity. Um, but again, remember Saul was Saul before Paul, and God still used him
Right.
and wrote books that is changing life even to this modern day. But
Right.
yet he moved on beyond his mistakes, and that was the same. And when he became Paul, then the Bible spoke of his bloodline generation. It went from Saul to Paul, the tent maker, based on connected to the Benjamite, his bloodline. God connected him to his identity, his bloodline. Only when he came into himself, when he was transformed, when he took on the identity of God, pinpointed him to his bloodline. Okay, so when we take on the identity of Christ, he pinpointed. It doesn't matter what happened in our bloodline, the past, what they did. He's still looking for an imagery of himself. He is still looking for one that's committed. He's still looking for um, the when I said his kabod, the one that smells like him, echoes him, that speaks to him. Well, he loves speaking to us because he hears his own mind dialoguing with him. He hears his own thoughts dialoguing with him. He can't help but to hear his own humor dialoguing with him. So he seeks opportunities to visit you. He speaks opportunity to spend time with you. The more we take on the imagery of him, as the more he communes with us, as the more he visits, as the more he creates opportunities so he could speak with you, because we take on an identity or his the characteristics and the consciousness of the creator.
Right. Wow. Wow. In all of this, I know all of this sounds, I hope it doesn't sound overwhelming to anybody. Um, and I know it seems like it's so many good things. It's so juicy. It's so, you want to dive into it. You want to dig into it. But I know honestly, and in reality, there are things that cause us to feel like we cannot receive of God. There are things that we feel like we cannot just get, or we cannot understand who it is exactly that God has called us to be because of things that we may have experienced, things that we are holding on to, or even if we're in those families where they've done things one way for so long, even if it's something that's bad, or even if it's something that hinders you from moving forward, and you feel like it's been done for so long. And so I'm stuck here. This is what we do. This is my family. This is our tradition. You are not stuck. You do not have to be stagnant. You can move on out of that. You can break out of that. But I know that there are things that hinder us from moving forward. That's life. That's what it is. And one key thing that you guys know I often talk about on this show is changing our mindset. Changing our mindset. And I'd like for Dr. Lovella to talk to us about what the 15 mindsets are.
Sure, wouldn't mind doing that. Um, we have so many mindsets. When I said based on thought, when I said come, because we could allow the language of our thoughts to override the language of the creator. And so we have to make up our minds what and who we want to be. So therefore, when we talk about mindsets, we're talking about a fixed mindset or a fixed attitude or disposition that predetermines one's responses and also interrupts situations, interrupt lives, interrupts life. So a fixed attitude is your attitude, the way you think, the way you look at things, your outlook. So one of the mindset is called a social mindset. The other is called the growth mindset. The other one is that fear mindset. You know who? They're full of fear. They're projecting fear. They're very fearful. The other is called the lazy mindset. Oh, they're just dumb. They're just lazy. We see all of these, but don't really. We think it's, well, it's the attitude. Oh, you know how we say they're just, it's got stinking thinking. They're just, they need to get it together. But all of these are yet the mind. And so what we do is, again, dealing with religion, we tend to rebuke it. You got to cast that thing out, rebuke it, rebuke it. These are thoughts, the way they're wired, the way they think. Okay. And so again, we talked about the lazy mindset. We talk about envy minds. We know it all too well. They're jealous. They're envious, and we can see it and identify it. We also have the business mindset, one that's business savvy, entrepreneurs. To your entrepreneur, they're straightforward to the point. And we also have the dreamer mindset. I have those that daydream all day. Daydream all day. I'm the one. I'm gonna see. My daughter said, "Well, how could you drive and daydream?" I said, "I did." I'm like, "Well, I'm sorry," but daydream. They're dreamers. They daydream all day. And then we have those that are followers. The followers mindset. They follow everything. They don't think for themselves. They will follow you. Okay. Then we have the greed mindset. Those that are cantankerous. Those are greedy. They're never satisfied. Then we have those that are gratitude. My mind, oh my gosh, there's so much going on. And that mindset will say, but it's sunny outside. Thank God, God gave us another day. It's beautiful outside. And like, can't you see it's raining? But it's beautiful. Thank God for another day. A mindset of gratitude. Then we have those that are confident. Some will say that they're cocky, but they have a confident mindset because they believe. Okay, believe, that's their philosophy. They believe, they have faith. And we have those that are creative, always innovative, creating a project, creating something. They're very creative. And we have those that are term mindset. They're either short term or long term, and they become tunnel vision. It is what it is, and I'm doing it my way, and that's it, because these are the terms. They have a term mindset. And then you have those that are angry. They have an angry mindset. No matter what you say or do, they always speak negative. They're just negative. They always see the negative part. They're always angry, projecting anger. And the last one is called the productive mindset. Always producing, always doing something, always on the go, always multiplying, producing, and enlarging territory. Okay, productive mindsets. So that's 15 mindsets, and I'm sure we've all ran into those mindsets.
Right. I was just going to ask now, if someone listening heard one of those mindsets that was a little bit negative, are they able to switch to one of the more positive mindsets that they heard?
Well, one that's negative don't see themselves as being negative. They don't, and we'll say you're being negative, and they really don't see themselves as being negative. I think at that point you'll either have to record them, or just, how we catalog time by saying, you said thus and thus, and you said thus and thus, and they'll say, I know I didn't say that, and I didn't say that. But they don't realize that they are negative is because their root issue is disappointments. They have been burned, betrayed, hurt, wounded, and so they can't see nothing good. They can't see that blue sky when everything is dark. So they project negativity when everybody is saying, we could take it, we could possess the land. Oh, well, how are you going to do that? We don't have the money. Bank accounts at such and such. It don't make no sense. They'll even try to talk you out of it because they just can't visually. They don't have eyes to see. They're very negative. So can they embrace it? As easier said than done. It just depends on what one is willing to accept, what one is willing to push forward from, what point of reference.
So true. Well, Dr. Lovella, it was an honor having you on the show. I do, before we close out, I do want you to tell everyone how they can connect with you. You have several things going on, I believe, or at least coming up. How can people be a part of that? How can they reach out to you if they want to ask you some questions or get to know you better, or just follow what it is that you're doing?
Okay, sure. They could find me via my website at lovellamogere.com. Lovella Mogere, Mogere.com, or they could find me on Facebook. It's still under my name, Lovella Mogere or Dr. Lovella Mogere, and also Instagram. We do have a virtual event coming up here on Saturday. It's called Women Arise. Looking forward to that. We're going to speak into the hearts, the minds of women and what God is saying and doing, because this is truly the time that women are at the forefront and they are going to literally, like David did, take over take over real estate by 400%. Not saying that the men are not doing that, but what I'm saying is that God is positioning us a little bit different. Okay, for those that was on the front line, now they're on the sideline, and for those that was in the back, now they're at the front. So looking forward to what God is doing. Also getting ready to do a 30-day Empower Her coaching segment. It will be on Facebook Live. It will be a group setting. It is free, and they're able to join us. And every day we are going to speak yet to women, whether it's dealing with the mind, the heart, yet the emotion, but we are going to empower her, which means to empower, to stimulate, to transcend, and we're going to synergize. So we are going to speak on topics, like I said, emotional currency. We're going to speak to the dreamer. We're going to speak to those that's getting ready to tackle their dream and they thought it was a seed form, but it has grown past seed form to adolescence to adulthood. So now when you're getting ready to embrace or tackle that dream, it has outgrown you. Now, what do you do when your dream has outgrown you? Do you have yet the tools, the resources? So again, what we're doing is empowering one, pushing, transcending, igniting, and activating those as they are ready to occupy and as they're able to take on dominant roles. Take on dominant roles. It's just time. It's time to fulfill their dreams. Mm-hmm.
Amen. Amen. Well, like I said, once again, it was such an honor to have you on the show. I've enjoyed our time, our conversation, and I'm sure the listeners have enjoyed it as well. You who are listening, as always, you know what I want you to do. I want you to be patient in affliction, be persistent in prayer, and always remember, never forget that closed mouths do not get fed.
Thank you so much, Travé, for having me on today.
Thank you.